In the heart of Umuahia village, where the sun kissed the earth with golden rays and the wind whispered secrets through the trees, there lived a little girl named Adis. She was as bright as the morning sun, with eyes that sparkled like the stars above. But despite her beauty and intelligence, Adis was lonely. Her parents, Chief Okeke and Madam Ifenanya, were wealthy traders who traveled far and wide to sell their goods. They loved their daughter, but their love was often buried under the weight of business and responsibilities. Every morning, they would rush off to their market stalls, leaving Adis in the care of drivers and housemates. They barely had time to ask about her dreams, her worries, or her little adventures in school. Adis longed for her parents' attention. She excelled in class, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they would notice her if she became the best. But even when she came home with her notebooks full of golden stars from her teacher, they only nodded absently, distracted by their endless discussions about money and business. One fateful afternoon, the school bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Excited children poured out of the classrooms, their laughter filling the air as they ran into the warm embrace of their waiting parents. Some jumped onto their father's bicycles, others clutched their mother's hands tightly, skipping home with joy. But Adis stood alone, her school bag hanging loosely on her shoulders. She waited. The school compound slowly emptied as one by one, her classmates left. She kept looking at big school gates, expecting the family driver to walk in at any moment. But no one came. Minutes turned into an hour. The sun began to lower itself into the sky, and the schoolyard, once filled with noise, became eerily quiet. Even her teacher, Madam Chinyere, had begun to lock the classroom doors. Adis, is someone coming to pick you up? Madam Chinyere asked, looking concerned. Yes, Ma. My parents will send someone, Adis replied, though doubt was creeping into her heart. All right. I will wait a little while longer with you, the teacher said kindly. Adis forced a smile, but inside, her heart felt heavy. She watched as Madam Chinyere paced around, glancing at the road from time to time. After a long wait, the teacher sighed. Adis, I have to go home now. My children are waiting for me, she said apologetically. I will tell the school security to watch over you until someone comes. Adis nodded, trying to be brave. She watched as her teacher left, her sandals making soft sounds against the dusty path. Now, she was truly alone. The security guard, Baba Kolu, was an old man with tired eyes. He sat on his wooden stool at the school gate, chewing a stick of chewing stick. He glanced at Adis and shook his head. Small madam, why have they not come for you? He asked in his deep voice. I don't know, Baba, Adis whispered. Baba Kolu sighed and muttered something under his breath. The sky was turning orange, and soon, darkness would take over. The old man scratched his grey beard and looked at Adis again. Come and sit here with me, he said, patting a small wooden bench beside him. Adis sat beside him, her small fingers clutching the straps of her school bag. She fought back tears. She would not cry. She had to be strong. But deep inside, fear was beginning to creep into her heart. Back at home, her parents were too busy to notice anything was wrong. Madam Ifenanya was counting money from the day's sales, while Chief Okeke argued with his business partners about a new supply of goods. They were so occupied that they did not even realize their daughter had not returned home. Night came. The school compound was now shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from Baba Kolu's small lantern. Crickets chirped in the bushes, and the sound of distant drums from a nearby village festival echoed through the air. Adis shivered. What if they never come, she thought. Baba Kolu noticed the fear in her eyes and sighed heavily. He stood up, stretching his old bones. "I cannot leave you here alone," he muttered. "Come, we will go to my house. Maybe by morning, your parents will come." Adis hesitated. Follow an old man she barely knew. But what choice did she have? She looked at the empty road once more, hoping to see the familiar car lights of her father's driver. But there was nothing. Swallowing her fear, she stood up and followed Baba Kolu into the night. The darkness swallowed them as they walked away from the school, Adi's small footsteps echoing in the quiet village. She did not know it yet, but this night would change her life forever. The night air was cool against Adi's skin as she walked beside Baba Kolu. She clutched the straps of her school bag tighter, her small heart pounding with fear. The village path was dark, with only the flickering flame of Baba Kolu's lantern lighting their way. The trees rustled as the wind whispered through their branches, and distant hoots of owls made Adis shiver. "Do not be afraid, my child," Baba Kolu said softly, sensing her fear. "We will soon reach my house." Adis swallowed hard and nodded, though her feet dragged with hesitation. The thought of sleeping in a strange place sent shivers down her spine, but what other choice did she have? She glanced back, hoping to see the familiar lights of her father's car, but the road behind them remained empty. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a small hut on the outskirts of the village. The hut was made of red mud bricks with a thatched roof, and a wooden door creaked as Baba Kolu pushed it open. Inside, a small oil lamp cast a warm glow over the single-room home, revealing a simple mat on the floor, a wooden bench, and a few cooking pots stacked in a corner. "Come in, sit," Baba Kolu said, gesturing to the bench. "You must be hungry." Adis hesitated before stepping inside. She perched on the edge of the bench, her eyes darting around the tiny space. Baba Kolu moved to a corner and brought out a wooden bowl filled with roasted groundnuts and a cup of water. "Eat," he said, placing them before her. Adi's stomach rumbled, but she was too scared to eat. Instead, she stared at Baba Kolu, trying to understand him. Was he truly kind, or did he have a hidden plan? Meanwhile, back in her home, her parents were beginning to notice something was wrong. Madame Ifenanya walked into Adi's room, expecting to see her curled up in bed, but the bed was empty. Her heart skipped a beat. "Okeke," she called out in panic. "Where is Adis?" Chief Okeke frowned, looking up from his business papers. "She should be sleeping." "Why do you ask?" "She is not in her room." Madame Ifenanya's voice trembled. Chief Okeke's face darkened. He called for the driver. "Did you not pick up Adis from school?" The driver's eyes widened in shock. "Sir, I thought she was with you." Madame Ifenanya let out a sharp cry. "My child is missing." The next morning, the village woke up to the news of Adis' disappearance. People gathered at the Okafor's compound, whispering among themselves. How could loving parents forget their own child? The village elders called Mr. and Mrs. Okafor to the square. "You must explain yourselves," Chief Ozo demanded, his deep voice carrying authority. "It was a mistake." Mrs. Okafor cried, tears streaming down her face. But the villagers were not convinced. "A mistake that could cost your daughter her life," someone shouted. Just then, Obi, a young boy who lived near the school, stepped forward. "I saw her leave with an old woman last night," he said. The villagers gasped. Everyone knew of the mysterious old woman who lived on the outskirts of the village. Some said she was a healer, others whispered she was a witch. A group of men immediately set out, racing against time to find Adis before it was too late. Adis awoke to a strange sound. She was no longer in the old woman's hut. Instead, she found herself in a misty forest, surrounded by towering trees that whispered as the wind passed through them. She stood up and rubbed her eyes. Was she dreaming? Adis. A voice called softly. She spun around, her heart pounding. In front of her stood a glowing figure, a woman dressed in white. Her eyes were kind, but there was sadness in them. Who are you? Adis asked, trembling. I am someone who once walked the same path you are walking now, the woman said. You are in danger, child. You must leave this place before it is too late. Adis' eyes widened. But the old woman said she wanted to help me. The figure shook her head. Not everyone who offers kindness has good intentions. Listen to him carefully. At dawn, she will ask you to eat something. Do not eat it. Do not drink anything. Find a way to escape. Just then, Adis felt something pulling her back. The mist thickened, and the glowing woman's face began to fade. Remember my warning, the voice echoed before everything went dark. When Adis opened her eyes, she was back in the hut, lying on a mat. The old woman was sitting beside her, stirring a pot over the fire. She turned and smiled. You must be hungry, child. Eat something before we take you home. Adis swallowed hard, the warning still fresh in her mind. I'm not hungry, she said quickly. The woman's smile faltered. Nonsense. You must eat. Adis shook her head, fear rising in her chest. The woman's eyes darkened, and for the first time, Adis noticed something unsettling. Her shadow on the wall did not match her movements. It was moving on its own. Meanwhile, the search party moved through the dense forest, struggling to find the hut. The deeper they went, the more obstacles they faced. Trees blocked their paths where there had been none before. Strange noises echoed around them. Chief Ozo, who led the group, frowned. Something unnatural is at work here. We must hurry. Little did they know, time was running out for Adis. As dawn broke, Adis knew she had to escape. She watched as the old woman busied herself with the pot, mumbling strange words under her breath. Adis' heartbeat quickened. Whatever was in that food was not meant to help her. Just as the woman turned away for a moment, Adis sprang to her feet and dashed out of the hut. The woman shrieked, her voice echoing unnaturally. Come back, child. You don't know what you are doing. Adis ran as fast as her legs could carry her, weaving through the thick forest. The trees seemed to close in on her, but she pushed forward. Just when she thought she could run no more, she burst into a clearing, right into the arms of Chief Ozo and the search party. Adis, her father shouted, grabbing her tightly. Tears streamed down her face. Papa. Mama, she sobbed. The villagers looked toward the hut, but it was gone. In its place was an empty patch of land, as if it had never existed. The villagers muttered prayers, realizing they had encountered something beyond their understanding. Back in the village, Adis' parents knelt before the elders. We have learned our lesson, Mr. Okafor said, his voice filled with regret. We will never take our child for granted again. The elders nodded solemnly. A child is a gift. One that should never be neglected. From that day on, Adis' parents changed. They made time for their daughter, ensuring she never felt alone again. And as for Adis, she never forgot the warning of the mysterious woman. She knew she had been given a second chance, one that not everyone was lucky enough to receive. And so, the village learned an important lesson: love and attention are worth more than all the riches in the world. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more stories like this.